Happy Friday. Welcome into the CHGO Blackhawks podcast. I'm Jay Zawaski here with Greg Boysen. Steven is with us today. The Bears people let him out of his cage and let him do an extra show today. We'll have to get him back in when the show's over, but we got to lure him in there with a steak, maybe a giant sub.
3 steaks.
It does work every time.
3 steaks and 2 dozen eggs.
Not learned my lesson.
Right.
They've got you programmed like I have my dog. I said to throw the dog treat so it hits the cage, and he hears the sound, and he's like, oh, that means a treat. And he goes right in there. Boom. Beautiful.
Hopped on I-55 and came in. Gets me every time.
Thanks for being with us. We appreciate it. Happy Friday. Yeah, it doesn't feel like Friday. It's been a weird week, but we're glad you're here. Hopefully all your hands are intact. If they are, use them to hit the like button for us. That would be great. You probably have one hand left, even if you blew off one of them.
All you need is a stump to hit the thumbs up button.
Just stump the like button.
Paw that.
Yeah. Just be careful. You don't want to get too much blood on your keyboard, but hit that like button for us on the YouTube page. Use the other stump to hit the subscribe button. And if you can possibly dial up your podcast app, follow, subscribe, rate, review, all that great stuff for us. All right, we've got a really busy show with a lot to get to today. Kyle Davidson met the media today at Fifth Third Arena, and we're just going to get into it, man, because there's a lot. And I think a big part of when people saw the free agent crop that came in on July 1st, everyone got kind of excited at first, and they're like, wait a minute, there's not a lot of spots open for dudes on this team. So Kyle Davidson kind of cleared up his philosophy here and shed some light on what he's thinking about the Blackhawks going into next season.
You've created more competition, which was the goal, but how do you balance this with when guys are ready? I mean, if Krasinski or Kaiser or Delmas or any of those guys are up, I mean, there's a lot of veterans that are now there. How do you evaluate who's ready and, making sure that getting so many veterans in also doesn't block their paths?
Yeah, and I don't see anyone being blocked, especially to the point of development being hindered here. If players are ready, especially young players are ready, and they're ready to come in and elevate the group more so than a player that's in a spot, then we'll make the decision on how to best find a role for them and find that. But what we couldn't do is what I believe happened a little last year, where we had spots for young players, and then maybe they're ready, maybe they were not quite thriving. You can't fix that in September. You have to have bodies in order to make sure that if you do need to give a prospect more time, you have to do that in July. You have to have the bodies there, so there is the opportunity for development, whether it's in Rockford, whether it's a lesser role. You can't fill those spots with veteran players ahead of some young guys that aren't quite ready in September. It's too late. And so I think what we're looking for is to create an environment that's an environment of more winning than it was in the past, and the young players can come up and elevate that when they are ready. I really admire they're in a different situation than us, but I really admire the development path that like Dallas took with Thomas Harley and a Logan Stankoven, where those players were brought in when they were ready to go and they were ready to elevate the group. And you saw with Stankoven, it was like a late season addition last year for Dallas, where he spent the time in the AHL, was really good in the AHL. I'm sure if that was our situation, we had a player doing that, we would have heard very early on that they need to be up. But Dallas waited, they were patient, and then he came in and was one of the more effective players down the stretch in the playoffs. And so I think that's more the situation that we'd like to follow, rather than put them in and hope that it works out throughout the year, because it can work for 2 weeks, a month, like we saw with even like Wyatt last year, good out of the gates. It's a tough league for young guys to thrive in, and we want our players to thrive. And the one thing that we've got at our disposal is Rockford, and I don't know if we've had a player that's gone down and come back up that hasn't gotten better in Rockford. And so we've got a ton of trust in Anders and his staff and the development staff working in Rockford to make sure that players go down there, they're going to be better. And all the evidence has shown that they do get better in Rockford. And so if that's the path we need to go, then we'll use that.
What do you see for Korchinski next year on that note?
Kevin's got to come in and earn a spot. I think we've created some competition around roles. That's what we set out we wanted to do after the season. And so him, much like anyone else, he's got to come in and take a spot, and he's got to be the young guys are going to have to be convincing in doing so, because what we don't want is to give them a spot and then after, again, like a month or so, it's just not working out, and we'd had to clear someone out to clear a spot for them, and then we can't get that player back. And so we want to be very sure that they're going to come in and elevate the whole group through their play and be able to sustain that. And so they've just got to come in and take a role.
Okay, that all makes really perfect sense. So, Kyle Davidson, how will you know when a prospect is ready?
You're always trying to challenge but not overwhelm. And I think that's the balance we always try and strike with development, is that you want them to be challenged, you want them to be pushed, but you also don't want them just to be treading water, or even slightly better than that. You want them to be pushed but be able to excel, and to the point where their confidence is always growing, their ability to maybe try some new things is always growing. The NHL is obviously the best league in the world. It's really hard for players to do that at the NHL level, as really young players. There is a time and place, but I believe it's hard for them to really grow that confidence and try new things and push their game to new levels as really young players at the NHL level. And so, we'll see where guys come into camp and kind of make the evaluations from there to see where they need to be to really take that next step. And because this is all about achieving their ceilings, longer term. We want them to hit what we believe they can be and what we believe they will be with responsible development. But we're not going to put players in the NHL just to say we have young players in the NHL. It's got to be the right thing to do.
I mean, it's perfectly logical, and I think if you had concerns about Korchinski or Kaiser or Del Mastro or whoever being blocked, I think he makes a really strong point in saying we're not going to put guys out there just because we have guys who can come and be okay at the NHL level. He wants them to be ready. He wants them to be confident. And I think the statement he used was challenge without overwhelming. That is key.
It's a refreshing change of pace from the last regime, who were just like, hey, you know how to tie your own skates. Get on out there, kid. Like, yes, you want them to not only be ready to play in the NHL, but ready to be good and effective and contributing right away. Like we saw last year with Lucas Reichel. He was given that spot in training camp, anointed second-line center, and it was a dud for much of the year. And now it's like, with all the new additions, not the 80s boy band, but, the players, you have 5 veteran forwards that have come in, 2 veteran defensemen, and a veteran goalie. Like, you're going to have to get here and be good to stay here. Yeah. There's no the floor has just gone up. It's not just the standard isn't just get to the NHL and play in the NHL. It's get to the NHL and thrive. That was a buzzword today from Kyle was thrive, and that's a really good philosophy. Now, these things always sound great in theory, but now let's see it in practice. Let's see how serious they are for, if there is a guy in Rockford, whoever, say Frank Nazar has to go down and start the season at Rockford. If it's, second week of November and he's a point per game player in Rockford and just looks like that league has nothing for him, do you bring him up and tell Craig Smith, hey, thanks? Sure, but there's no rush on it. Like, I agree, but you're not competing for anything here. And he did mention Logan Stankoven and how he came up and contributed for the Stars and was really good. It's a little bit different. It's a little bit apples and oranges because,
had the Stars been a rebuilding team, chances are Stankoven would have been there from game one. But this is a team trying to posture for the best possible playoff position. But, like, look, if Nazar's lighting it up, let him light it up. And then if something comes up where, hey, maybe another team next year is the one that has a crap ton of injuries and has to go find whoever might be available, then, hey, Kyle Davidson says, hey, I got Craig Smith here. He's a vet. He can come in here and fill in for you. He's not going to hurt you. Or Pat Maroon, hey, here's a 3-time Cup winner. He's going to come in, be good in your room. But there's no need to rush it. And I think it's safe to assume that some combination of these one-year deal guys, Martinez, Maroon, and Smith, some combination of those three could be dealt at a deadline, opening up spaces for younger guys. So while we are impatient, and I'm raising my hand here, I am impatient. I want to see these young players play. Why? Because it will entertain the hell out of me. I'm not the GM, thank God.
Short trip west on 90, you can see them all
exactly.
play.
Like that's the thing is what he is saying makes all the sense in the world. And I think last year, because you had young guys up here, Connor Bedard obviously was not going to play anywhere but Chicago. Kevin Korchinski was either Seattle or here. So you got in this habit of like, wow, they're really starting to play young guys. That was kind of a one-year thing out of necessity. I don't think what they did this year upsets the rebuild at all. I think if anything, it enhances it.
I agree. Like, some people started throwing the term win now mode. That's a load of crap. Look at this roster. This roster's not winning anything.
No, absolutely not.
It's going to win more games than it did last year, but if it gets 75 points, I think that's realistic with this team.
I saw Jay Fresh had his projection today and said 77.
Yeah, but
still last in the Central.
But I can never take when that guy's being serious or not.
That feels about right though for the Hawks.
No, if they can get 75 points, that is a 23-point improvement, and you're still missing the playoffs by 20 points.
Right.
That's how far they have to go.
Yeah.
Tavo and Tyler Bertuzzi aren't taking this team and getting them in the playoffs.
No.
They're going to be much better, which means, guys like Connor Bedard and whoever the young players are, Alex Vlasic, some of these guys that have been here for a couple years already, they're going to start knowing what it takes to close out games instead of holding on for dear life and ultimately losing. They're going to get that feel of winning. They're going to know what playing a full 60 minutes feels like and scoring a goal early in a game and actually winning that game, not scoring in the first 4 minutes and losing 6-1. Like, they're going to start gaining confidence. So when these younger guys start here, they can be the leaders that they're projected to be. It's like rebuilds take time. This is the third season, full season of Kyle Davidson in control. He's had, multiple drafts now, but this isn't the NFL where you get drafted and you're in the league from day one. You take 2, you take 3, you take 4 years to get in. This gives the players more time that need it. Nobody's getting rushed. All we did was complain over Hugh Shinapi about how he rushed prospects.
Yes.
Kirby Doc, Adam Boquist, Joe Kiharyu. The list goes on and on. They rushed all of them. They ruined them. Then they traded them.
Yes.
Davidson was around for all that, saw it, and says, I'm going to do the exact opposite.
There are 2 prospects in this system that I'm convinced are NHL ready. Connor Bedard and Alex Vlasic. That's it. Those are the ones I know without any doubt at all that those 2 are ready. And I'm glad you mentioned what you did about them being in games next year, because that's the next thing Kyle Davidson had to say. We're going to get to that coming up here in a second. But first, we want to tell you about our friends, and boy, are they our friends this time of year, at the Illinois Pork Producers. It's grilling season. Get your pork. People who are active need more protein than the average American. In fact, the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, the Dietitians of Canada, and the American College of Sports Medicine recommend 1.2 to 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day for athletes, depending on their training. So for a 150-pound person, that's about 81 to 136 grams of protein per day. 1 3-ounce serving of pork provides 23 grams of high-quality protein that can help active individuals build and preserve muscle. Elevate your protein game with lean pork, a powerhouse of natural goodness. Savor the flavor, savor the gains, and celebrate any occasion by enjoying the best pork produced by Illinois pig farmers. From your sausage and bacon for breakfast to pulled pork and juicy chops hot off the grill, it's an entire season dedicated to pork and the people behind the product, paid for by the Illinois pork producers. Generations of commitment.
Hey, and get ready to be the most stylish of your crew this summer with Cuts. Most guys would wear a t-shirt every day of their lives if they could. True. I do. The problem is that most t-shirts are not acceptable to wear at work, get a better job, or on a hot date night, get a better girlfriend. Today's sponsor, Cuts, has finally changed that. Cuts t-shirts are such high quality, wrinkle-free, and are so buttery soft that you can look like you're dressing up even when you're dressing down. Yeah, you heard that. Wrinkle-free. You'll never have to substitute comfort for fashion ever again. Dive into summer with Cuts. For a limited time, you could save money on Michael Chandler's favorite clothing company by heading to cutsclothing.com and use code CHGO for 20% off. The best part about the Cuts clothing is their fabric quality. It's breathable. It sets the standard for softness. It just feels so comfortable when you're wearing the clothes. It doesn't even, it feels like you're wearing the most casual shirt you've ever owned, but you don't look like it. That's the important part. So embrace the summer state of mind with Cuts. For a limited time, our listeners get 20% off your entire order when you use the code CHGO at checkout. That's 20% off your order at cutsclothing.com with that promo code CHGO. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Experience the perfect blend of style and comfort with Cuts clothing.
Saw a comment in the chat from Jim who says, I think Nazar is also close and NHL ready. We saw Frank Nazar for 3 games last year. 3 meaningless games.
Right.
And he looked great in them.
Sure he did.
Don't get me wrong. He did. But to make any sort of declaration, for you, Jim, it's fine. And for me and Greg, it's fine. But for Kyle Davidson to go, yes, that 43 minutes of ice time he had over those 3 games really convinces me that he is NHL ready, and boom, we are counting on him to start the season game 1. That's just, it's irresponsible. And like Kyle Davidson said, you can always get rid of guys. If you get rid of guys too early, there's no going back. And if Frank Nazar comes up and has 10 great games and all of a sudden the league catches on to him and he starts to struggle, much like Wyatt Kaiser did last year, then what do? You've got no solutions. So with that, I want to get to the next cut here where Kyle Davidson talks about the team's makeup and how he thinks it's going to put the Hawks in better position to be competitive and to sustain injuries.
I believe we've got a position where we can be responsible with development. We can create roster competition, accountability, raise the level of our NHL team, but also protect against things like we saw last year. And look, I've been in Chicago for over 10 years, and I've never seen a rash of injuries like that. So you don't plan on that. You don't sign a team around that. But we went through it last year, and we were not the deepest team to begin with, and we became a really shallow team in the middle of that year with all those injuries. And that's not fair to the veterans, not fair to the especially the young players having to step in and play such heavy minutes that early in their career, and to be asked of so much from them during those times that's not healthy for their development. That's not what we want. And so to be able to create depth, and then if there are injuries and there's a player that is going to come up and be able to come into a spot that's into a team that's a little more positive and maybe getting a few more wins than we did last year, I think that'll only serve them well, and it'll be a great environment for the young players that are here. But then there's a great environment in Rockford that they can own next year too. But I think the options on where to put players in the environments to place young players only comes with more depth, and I think that's something we've achieved the last couple of days.
So like we say a lot with Kyle Davidson, whether or not this whole thing works out and the Hawks become Stanley Cup champions again in the next 7 to 10 years remains to be seen. But what he says makes sense. And it doesn't sound like someone who's spinning things or trying to after the fact sell you on something that he did that maybe he didn't love. There's clearly a plan here, and I honestly, as much as I was looking forward to a lot of young guys playing, now looking back on it, this does feel like the safer and more conservative way to go about a rebuild, and it's probably the more responsible way to do it too.
Yeah, I mean, there is the temptation. You have Connor Bedard.
Mm-hmm.
Do you just start loading up with, try and build through free agency and scrap the rest of the rebuild? I mean, the Edmonton Oilers did that when they got Connor McDavid, and look how long it took them to get where they are. It took 9 years of Connor McDavid to get past the conference final. They already had Leon Draisaitl in the organization. They got him the year before.
Yeah.
And
Nugent Hopkins.
Yeah. But they decided, well, okay, let's try and win now. Let's try and be a playoff team from day one. And it definitely hindered their overall progress. So there is the temptation to just say, let's just start trading guys. But it has been very obvious for a long time that Kyle Davidson wants to win with his guys. He wants to build the core and win with those guys, and then use, complementary pieces to fill the holes of the pieces that just aren't there. You could say that's a little egotistical, but you got to have a bit of an ego if you want to win. You got to have confidence in your own abilities, and that's a good thing.
Your point's right, though. The Oilers did go out and do that. And look, you're getting one of the great players of all time. Yeah, there's probably some responsibility to go out and try to be better quicker, but it does stun you a little bit because you're forced to then maybe overpay. Every free agent is probably overpaid. When you know what I mean? Aside from guys that are bought out, right? More often than not, these guys are going to get paid probably more than they're worth to a team because they are a commodity. It becomes a bidding war. I feel pretty good about the contracts given to Teravainen and Bertuzzi. They're about what was projected.
Yeah, and they're not super long term, so
so they make sense. But I don't think what Edmonton, and I know you're not saying this, what Edmonton did and what Davidson's doing are not the same, because they were just F it, time to win now.
Right.
Well, the Hawks are saying, look, getting Connor Bedard was great, and like Chris Peters says, that cuts a year off the back of the rebuild, but we have 7 other first-round picks we've made in the last 3 years, all of which, so far, seem to be developing correctly. Everything you hear about, obviously, Nazar, Korchinski looked fine last year. Not great, but fine. Oliver Moore had a good year at Minnesota. Sam Renzel's doing well. All these picks are okay. You're starting to see it come together, and while it's not here in Chicago yet, it's going to be here soon.
I think a lot of people also the last build up to the dynasty era teams. It took a lot longer than a lot of people realize. Yes, Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews, Kane got here right away. Toews played a year in North Dakota after so you saw those guys get here quickly and be good right away. And people started paying attention more in 2009 and then obviously in 2010, but you didn't see how long it took Brent Seabrook and how long it took Duncan Keith to become the players they were. And, Corey Crawford was in Rockford for 3 decades before he got, and Nicholas Jarmelson was a slow developing player, right? These guys all had time down there. And, if you saw Duncan Keith, his rookie season, if you were watching the team then, you would have thought there's no way this guy is ever going to be an everyday NHL player, let alone a 2-time Norris Trophy winner, a 3-time Stanley Cup winner, and a surefire first ballot Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
So got to let these guys take their time. Kyle Davidson is going about it the right way. Will it all work out? None of us can predict that. But I would much rather have a patient and aggressive general manager. Davidson's both.
Yes, he is.
He is very aggressive, but he is also patient. Once he gets what he wants, he then knows he masterfully so far avoids the temptation to Russia. And I got to give him a ton of credit because I wouldn't be as patient as he is. But that's why he has that job and I have this job.
I threw this up on Twitter, and our buddy Dom had a comment on this a little bit earlier, kind of saying that, like, yeah, they've got Bedard, but they need to get like that Malkin. They need to get the Kane to Taves, the Crosby to Malkin, that sort of thing. And need a high pick to do so. There's a cut on social media today where Davidson's talking about the forward group, and that was kind of the question is, hey, you're not going to be able to really pick top 2 or 3 anymore. Maybe not that opportunity to get that dynamic forward. And he basically flat out said, it's not the only way to get a top forward. You can trade, you can free agent, like they'll find their ways. And Kyle Davidson's showing you the holes he's needed to fill free agent wise, he's done. He got Bertuzzi and Teuvo. Those guys could have easily said, I'm not coming to Chicago. Teuvo, I've been here already. I want to win. I want a chance at the cup. He got here. Nick Foligno makes a call to Tyler Bertuzzi, and Tyler Bertuzzi says, hell yeah, sign me up. I'm in.
Right.
Like he has been, and even just the rumor of had, Anaheim taken Caden Lidstrom instead of, what's his face? Whose name I can't remember.
Surprise
kid.
Seneke.
Yeah. Then Ivan Demidov would have been a Blackhawk too. Because Kyle Davidson's that aggressive.
Yes, and I wanted Ivan Demidov.
We all did, for the most part.
But none of us know that he's going to be that Malkin to,
right.
We don't know. He's got a really good chance of being a very, very good NHL player, but we don't know. We've said that about a lot of people in the past. We don't know what any of those guys are going to be. So, there are, yes, you don't necessarily, would you prefer to draft your dynamic force? Sure you would, but it doesn't always work out that way. I mean, they're not the model to how to build a Stanley Cup, but what did the Panthers do? We need to change things. Okay, we have Barkov here, but we need to do better. We traded our franchise leading scorer in Jonathan Huberdeau, the best offensive Florida Panther of all time, to get Matthew Tkachuk. And that put him over the top.
Yeah.
So there are ways to do it.
But he has shown over and over again the ability to land free agents, the fact that he's aggressive and goes out and gets what he wants. He's able to convince guys to sign here, even less than ideal circumstances. He's managed the cap extremely well so far. Like every box that you want from a GM, he has kind of checked. Every test has come his way. Now, the last test for him, well, there's 2 left. How will ultimately these guys develop under his hockey operations staff?
That's the biggest one still. That's the biggest question that has yet to be answered.
Yes. And when that massive fish free agent is there, whether we're talking about Leon Draisaitl or Mikko Rantanen or Mitch Marner or whoever it might be, will he be able to add that guy? And the other thing with that is those guys are unicorns. Those guys don't become free agents very often, and they're going to go to the place that they want to go. So even if Leon Draisaitl chooses somewhere else over Chicago, it doesn't necessarily mean he's a failure in that regard.
Right.
But you want to see him be able to get that sort of thing done. All right, coming up next, we're going to hear the latest on Artyom Levshunov and what his status is heading into the end of development camp here. But first, we want to tell you about our friends with Indeed. They're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search. Match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. I had to hire for a short time between the score and here, and as I was interviewing probably 50 to 60 candidates, probably about 35 to 40 of them said they found the job on Indeed. It's a great place to find workers. It's a great place to find employment. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/AllCity. Just go to Indeed.com/AllCity right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/AllCity. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Hey, I saw earlier our pal Rooney just re-up for another year of being a CHGO diehard. And just like Rooney, you can be one of the cool kids and become a CHGO diehard. And when you sign up and when you renew, you get to pick one free shirt of your choice. We've got dope merch for all the teams, including coming soon. You can order it now. Our brand new 27C Hall of Fame shirt. You know who that's in honor of. You can grab that now. If you have the 98C 8-bit, 16-bit shirt, you got to add to your collection. You got to have them both. So get that now. Diehards can get 20% off if you're already a diehard, but if you sign up now, you can get that one for free. You also get members-only access to our Discord lounge and premium written content for members only over at allchgo.com. Plus, you get 20% off all of our events coming up. We're going to probably have another big year of Bears tailgates, Blackhawks takeovers. We're already working out some dates. We've got some stuff coming. We've got the inaugural Cookout Classic Golf Tournament coming up on July 22nd, where you can join many of your favorite CHGO personalities for a day of golfing at St. Andrews Golf and Country Club. Not that one, the one in West Chicago.
Yeah, just as good.
And we also announced the second annual, choked up over the Kickoff Classic at Cog Hill. That's coming up later in August. Plus, the Bears are traveling all over the world, and you can join them. London. Yeah. They're going to Arizona. Must be nice to travel as much. Steven, I hope you have your passport. And
I got it.
Yeah, you get 20% off anything that has to do with CHGO. So become a diehard today, and we'll even send you a nice little box of stickers with a membership card and your shirt.
It's right there holding the hat up in the Schultz shaker.
Yes, and you'll get our undying gratitude and love, which is priceless.
That is priceless. Before we get to the Levshunov comments here by Kyle Davidson, a couple of chats I want to get to. Josh, a little bit up, asked about the captaincy that was addressed by Kyle Davidson. By the way, we're going to post the entire Kyle Davidson press conference. It was about 34 minutes or so. We're going to throw that up on YouTube later today.
It'll be on at 3:45.
There you go, 3:45 exactly. You'll be able to watch the whole thing. But he did address the captaincy and said it's something they haven't really gotten to yet. But as the summer goes on, they'll kind of talk about the plans for the next Blackhawks captain, or maybe they'll just keep doing A's this year. Who knows? Who knows what they're going to do? But that was definitely on the docket. So make sure 3:45 right there on youtube.com/CHGO Sports. You'll be able to see the whole thing with Kyle Davidson. That's good stuff. All right, here is the update on Artyom Levshunov. Still some questions about whether he'll return to Michigan State or play with the organization next season.
Kind of having those conversations right now. With Artie, I don't think there's a wrong answer. Adam Nightingale and the Michigan State staff have a world-class program. And so if he were to return to college, then he's got a really great program, facilities, system that he's going to play in on a good team in a great league. So that would be great. If he turns pro, we'll have hands-on all the time, which is always a huge benefit on our end to have that 24/7 ability to have those touch points every day and really hone in on the development and the play and the lifestyle of a young player. And so whichever way it goes, I believe he'll be in a great position to take some really positive steps, but hopefully figure that out in the next week or so.
So we'll get news on Levshunov's status soon. And I know he's kind of got to say, oh, well, Michigan State's a great program and he'll be fine there. I just get the feeling when you listen to people from New York, they really want Levshunov to play in Rockford.
It sounds that way, that they'd rather have him here, have him 75 miles away and, have their coaches and their development staff working on with him and getting him acclimated to being a pro and getting him to be part of the culture.
Yeah.
If the plan is for Kevin Korchinski to go down and play in Rockford, well, It's a good chance to get those guys working on their on-ice chemistry together.
Sure.
In big moments, playing top pair minutes, playing power play, playing penalty kill, all that stuff. But going back to Michigan State isn't the end of the world either. They're developing in college has improved hundreds of time over over the past 10, 15 years. If he goes back to Michigan State, he's going to have far more practice, a lot more practice time because they only essentially play on the weekends.
Right.
So you're going to have a lot more time on the ice to work on the little things. Video rooms, you're going to have a lot more time to be in the gym, work on your diet, your overall fitness without the pressure of playing 4 or 5 times a week. But in Rockford, there's less pressure because it's not all not everything is performance driven.
Right.
Michigan State, they want to win a national championship.
Yes.
They want to go back to the NCAA tournament. They want to win the Big Ten. So if you have a couple games where you struggle, your ice time might go down, or you might play on a different parent, or you might sit a game. Where in Rockford, Andre Sorensen said it the other day when he spoke at development camp, saying, at least in Rockford, if you have a bad stretch, you're not losing your playing time. You're not losing your spot.
Right.
Part of the reason we're here is to develop. So there's pros and cons to both sides.
Yeah, like I said about Korchinski, and I might have mentioned this earlier this week with Levshunov, it's like I don't want the game to come too easily for him. And because when that happens, you develop bad habits. And a couple of us were sent someone who didn't like the pick, went through all the Michigan State tape and found every time Levshunov looked bad, which you could do with pretty much every player.
18-year-old defenseman making mistakes while I never.
But what he's doing in Michigan State is they're saying, hey, kid, go out there and do your thing. And we know that you're so dynamic and so much better than most of the competition that you're going to be fine and you'll be able to get back or we'll cover for you. We just want you to, we just want you to go out there and win the game for us, whatever it takes. At the AHL level, he's going to have to stick to a structure. He's not going to be able to go out there and freewheel as much as he was able to do in college, just like Kevin Korchinski going back to Seattle last year made no sense. Because what's he going to do, score 100 points and not be challenged at all? How does that help your development? I don't know. And look, I'm not trying to, maybe the college aspect is maybe more appealing to a North American kid of like, hey, I want to have that NCAA life and going to Michigan State means something to me. Right. Levshunov's whole point of going to Michigan State was to get to the NHL.
Right.
Get maximum exposure.
Right.
Get out there, be seen.
Getting that professional paycheck might be tempting too.
I think he's coming to Rockford. That's for sure.
They're definitely trying to convince him because if not, they would have said it already.
Yes.
If it was going to be Michigan State, they would have said it. So they're definitely trying to make it happen and get everybody on the same page, get everybody feeling comfortable. It definitely feels like he's going to go pro and he'll play in Rockford this year. And maybe he gets a taste at the end of the year, give him a couple games, and then he starts next year in Rockford too.
Yeah.
Like,
why not? Give him the Vlasic treatment.
He's very young, very raw talent, hasn't played hockey as much as most guys his age. So there's a lot to be learned there. His learning curve might take a little longer than others, but take your time. Take your time. Your defensive prospect pool is deep, a lot of talent in it. So if it takes him 2 years to get to the NHL, takes him 2.5, that's fine.
Yeah. Sean in the chat says, go back to, it's down a little bit, Steven, sorry. Sean like Shawn Michaels. There you go. Sean says, go back to college. What's the problem with dominating? He will not outgrow the NCAA, just like Hughes, McAvoy, Power, McCarr, etc. He will not cost that a stupid take. Go and be the guy. I don't know what to make of that last sentence, but I think he's calling me stupid. What is the gain, though? Like, was already dominant. He was defenseman of the year. He was freshman of the year. Come here under the watchful eye of the organization, play with guys you're going to be playing with for the next decade, get to learn each other's tendencies. What good does it do him to go to Michigan State? I don't know for me, like, what's the benefit? And yeah, what Kyle Davidson says of, well, he'll be under good coaching and a great program. That's all true. Of course. Right. Wonderful. I don't know, maybe blows an ACL out. I don't know. Like it could happen anywhere.
Yeah,
but
maybe
I would like him with NHL doctors.
I definitely think that Kyle used the number 2 overall pick in the NHL draft over him, a pick that was, by a lot of the fan base, a lot of people in our chat, unpopular. They wanted another guy. So maybe it's, hey, let's get him under our control. Let's develop him right away. You know, I want to hit this one. I want to prove to everybody that I was right in picking this kid at number 2. So I don't want to risk any kind of outside influence on his development.
I'm with you. All right, we got another cut we got to get to here. With all this said, with all these new additions, with the philosophy of slowly developing kids, what is the goal of this upcoming NHL season?
We want to be better. We want to be better. We want to, we want to be able to go into games and impose ourselves on a game more than we have in the past, rather than trying to always stem the tide or having teams take it to us. We want to be able to play with the puck more and control the game a little more and obviously get more wins as a result. But I believe it's our ability to impose ourselves on the game more than we have in the certainly the last 2 years.
Don't worry about it. So there you have it. That's there's the goals for this season. Be competitive. And I think that matters. We talked about it a little bit earlier in the segment, like playing games that matter, be in games where you're not just getting dominated and holding on for dear life. Maybe put together a winning streak, win 3, 4, 5 games in a row. If you can do that, that's all important stuff. Like that's all, like you don't want to get a culture of losing around here. And while I think having a guy like Nick Foligno on your team is going to prevent that in some ways, what we sort of learned at the end of the season last year was that there was a bit of a culture of losing. There was a kind of a wink, like, hey, we've got some guys that are maybe a little bit dinged up, but not necessarily injured, that just don't want to play right now. We've got some guys that maybe aren't really bought in on the roles they're in right now. We don't have a lot of buy-in happening here. And I think when you're playing in games that mean more, that's good for everybody. Even if the end result is missing the playoffs or finishing last in the Central, you're not finishing last in the Central by 25 points. You're finishing last in the Central by 5 or 6 points.
Yeah, agree. Yeah. Eventually you have to start getting that culture that they keep talking about. We heard Luke Richardson at the Blackhawks store. Will always be Hawks quarters to me.
Yes, Hawks quarters.
That from day one, they want to build a culture. Well, they're trying to build that more this year. This is the year you can really start, getting that as part of the dynamic here in Chicago.
Yeah. The other thing I want to make sure we get to, too, is speaking of Nick Foligno, during his Zoom before the Kyle Davidson spoke, Tyler Bertuzzi flat out said, the Hawks weren't really on my radar, and then Nick Foligno called me and kind of convinced me about how things were going over there. So Kyle Davidson today was actually asked about, do we have the short Bertuzzi clip?
No, I have the short version. Yeah, we have the full.
Yeah, we don't need to play the whole thing. Let's just get to the Kyle Davidson responding to it here. He was basically asked, like, what's it like having Nick Foligno as, like, an assistant GM?
Yeah, it's nice. It's funny to hear. I think Nick's got a lot of friends around the league. He seems like a guy whose network is very, very large, and so it's kind of funny when we hear that. We don't ask them to do these things, but I think Nick cares. He knows a lot of people, and he loves the team and wants to push this thing forward. So I think you can see that through some of his discussions that he's had with guys, both internally and obviously he's met a lot of people along the way externally that he's willing to tell how great he thinks the Blackhawks organization is. So it's much appreciated.
And for the uncertainty, I had a little bit about Tyler Bertuzzi, and some people did. That's the second time that Nick Foligno has gone to bat for Tyler Bertuzzi. He was also instrumental in getting him to Boston when they had him in Boston. And if you missed it, Tyler Bertuzzi's short run in Boston was really solid. Like, he was very good for the Bruins.
They didn't choke because of anything he did.
Right. It's because they're fraudulent.
Yeah, well, and I'm not the biggest Tyler Bertuzzi fan, though I have said that I will go into this with an open mind because really, what other choice do I have?
Right.
I'm not going to sit here and pout and not talk to the guy.
If things don't go exactly your way, you should just pout about it nonstop.
I'm an adult.
We're getting a new jar.
We're
getting a new jar. I'm telling you.
Better be a big one.
The Demidov Levshunov thing is going to be for 10 years now.
I hope not. I
I
think once actual hockey starts, hopefully that will start going away. But
We'll
yes,
see.
we get it. They didn't draft the guy you wanted. You're mad. It's okay. The sun came up every day since then. You'll be fine. But yeah, I'm not the biggest Bertuzzi guy, but if Nick Foligno's going to bat for him, that definitely sways me and say, okay, maybe I've been wrong. We'll see what happens. Players that have played with him love him. There are a lot of fans in Toronto. Now, take this with a grain of salt. It's Toronto hockey fans. Very upset that he left and Max Domi is staying. But I felt this same way when Max Domi was signed. Where I was kind of like, really? But then we got to know him on a personal level. We got to see what he did on ice, and I became a fan. And so much so, I wanted Domi back this year.
Yeah.
I wanted him back last year. So Bertuzzi's got 4 years to win me over.
Well, they're kind of.
But he doesn't have to win me over. He just has to go out and play and be the player that they bring him in.
They're cut from the same cloth.
But if they're very similar players,
and you got the name reputation tied to both of them.
Fans are gonna love him. The guys that still wear their Andrew Shaw jerseys to the game are gonna love him.
If teammates love him, I'm down. That matters.
Listen, Nick Foligno is a guy that in his 1 year here, and I'm not just saying this because he's been on our show multiple times, and even before we put that deal together, I took what Nick Foligno had to say very well. That guy knows he's a very well-respected player. He's a pro's pro, and if he vouches for you, then I'm on board.
Look, you need a guy like Tyler Bertuzzi, because we were talking. I don't remember if I said it on the show or not, but leading up to free agency, as he was kind of working through his stuff at Toronto, I looked at you guys and said, it makes a ton of sense. He checks a lot of boxes for the Hawks. He's a top 6 forward. They can put the puck in the net. That goes into corners. It stands in front of the net on power play. Everything this team has lacked over the last few years, he is. And for all the thoughts about his personality and his teammateship to steal from Phil Emery, like all those sort of things, if guys like Nick Foligno want him, when they clearly didn't want some of the teammates he had last year, and was not shy about it when the season ended, if a guy like Nick Foligno is going to bat for you, that is meaningful to me. And I am now completely open-minded on Tyler Bertuzzi.
Yeah, and I'll be the first to admit, a lot of my towards him is PTSD of the last name.
Yeah.
For his Uncle Todd, who's penis.
Well, he is a penis, but Todd Bertuzzi was also an awesome hockey player. He's a 50-goal scorer in an era where a lot of guys didn't score 50 goals. He was a stud, but then he almost killed a guy on the ice,
right?
Completely derailing what was probably a Hall of Fame career for Todd Bertuzzi.
Maybe.
Todd Bertuzzi was great.
He was just
People forget.
He was just a jagoff.
He was, yes.
So I think a lot of that has to go with that. I see the last name, and he.
Sorry, 46 goals.
Oh, that's not 50. Why you?
He had 97 points in 82 games in 2002-2003.
Yeah, he was a hell of a player for a very long time, 18-year career.
Yep.
But a lot of that has to do with that. When I was covering the AHL, Tyler Bertuzzi was down with the Grand Rapids Griffins, and he'd been suspended a handful of times, including one for a pretty egregious slew foot play.
Yeah.
So, but again, that's when he's, was 21, 22. Guys can mature. I just don't want him to be that guy that gets selfish and costs the Blackhawks games, because he's going to be here when this team starts really sniffing playoff spots. I just don't want him to be counterproductive. But when you look at his overall numbers and look at his penalty minutes, they're not
53 last year.
right, which was the most he's had in a while.
He had 6 penalty minutes in 21 games with the Bruins.
So, well, there were other guys in that team taking all the penalty
It
minutes.
seems like he's
There's
a guy
only one
who
penalty
is-
box in Boston.
he is. It seems like a guy who has matured, who has learned his lessons on the ice. Look, I don't know. I don't know him well enough to talk about his off the ice demeanor. All we know is he's the one guy in the league that did not go along with the vaccine protocol. I'm not getting into it, but I think there's something to read into it when Steve Yzerman was like, really? Okay, good. You're going somewhere else.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm done trying to figure out Steve Yzerman these days. I'm also done trying to figure out the Buffalo Sabres, who just traded former 9th overall pick Matthew Savoy to the Oilers for Ryan McLeod.
Well, I know the Oilers were trying to clear cap space.
Well, they did.
Because they're 2.4 over the cap.
So you
McLeod
could
makes 2.1.
you could be mad at who Kyle Davidson picked number 2 overall, or we could be the Buffalo Sabres. Who
Savoy makes 886.
He's a minimum
for the next 3 years.
He's on an ELC. Picked 9th overall 2 years ago.
That's very weird.
And you're trading him for Ryan effing McLeod? That's bad trade.
I don't get that at all.
That's a really bad trade. When you consider Buffalo is not a Ryan McLeod away from being a playoff team. Nobody's a Ryan McLeod away from being a playoff.
Certainly
I
not.
like Ryan McLeod. He's a nice 4th liner, but you don't trade somebody that has the potential of being a top 6 forward for a 4th liner. So again, you know,
yeah, that's weird.
you can get mad at Kyle Davidson, and then the Buffalo Sabres are here to go, oh, well, it could be worse.
Hold my beer. Yeah, I don't know. By the way, what is
Would you trade Frank Nazar for Ryan McLeod?
no?
That's essentially what they
Hell
just
no. But usually when you're trying to dump salary, you're like, please take this overpaid bum off my hands.
did. Yeah, we'll
give us a used puck bag.
Yeah, or we'll give you a 4th round pick.
Not
to
a
take
former
this.
9th overall pick. What is the Sabres' plan?
They don't have one.
You buy out Jeff Skinner to do what? To do what? What do they do?
Well, I think they probably made a few phone calls and they weren't answered.
What? I mean, I'm trying to look at their plan. What were their free agent signings?
Did they have any?
Jason Zucker.
Oh, wolf.
Okay.
That'd been great
Fine.
6 years ago.
I'm just going through their list right now.
They're like the Coyotes East.
James Reimer,
Except they're going to stay
Devin
where
Levi.
they are.
I mean, they didn't.
They didn't get better.
Oh, and are eating all this Jeff Skinner money. I don't know.
Maybe getting that
understand.
known cancer, Jeff Skinner, out of your locker room is going to make all the difference.
That's crazy.
And they
That's
hired
crazy.
Lindy Ruff as their coach, too.
Well, it has to work because he coached there before.
I don't know, man. I just that's and I like the Sabres. I've always had a soft spot for the Sabres. I don't know why.
Cool uniforms.
Cool uniform. Now that they went back to the cool uniform, they've always kind of been like, little brother to the
They're like
Rangers.
punk rock, yeah.
The Rangers. They're this little small town in upstate New York. The fans go crazy for them because that's all they got. Them and the Bills. But man, if I'm a Sabres fan right now, I am not happy.
Yeah, Steven, I'm sorry. I don't like to get distracted by the chat, but what is Luka Doncic going off about in the chat?
Doesn't he have free throws to take?
Is he
or
mad
something?
at us for not?
There's a lot of Luka Doncic.
Oh yeah, there's a lot going on there. I did see one thing that he was not. Kyle was not asked about the trade with Columbus that did not happen because he's not going to say anything about it.
No, he's going to say, I tried.
I
and it
can't
didn't
comment
work.
on other teams' players or assets. Yeah, he's not going to talk about that, nor should he. That's irresponsible. But I also think too, no one's trying to denigrate Demidov, but I just think that if we're going to have this discourse now for the next 10 years, every time Demidov scores a goal,
apparently he was defending us to someone else in the chat.
Okay.
I
I
just don't understand the need to. If you're a fan of a team, you call yourself a fan of the team, and they didn't draft the guy you wanted, you automatically call the other guy a bust and hope he fails. That's not being a fan of the team.
No, I also saw somebody
That's
say that
counterproductive.
if Levshunov's not Chris Pronger, it's a blown pick. What? What are you talking about? That's crazy.
Well,
Victor Hedman's not Chris Pronger.
No.
There's a lot of really good players. Aren't Chris Pronger? Chris Pronger was great, like an all-timer, until his concussions caught up with him.
Right.
I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah,
it's. I don't know. It's. Here's the deal: if Levshunov busts and Demidov is the next Pavel Datsyuk, and you're right, does anyone care that you're right? Nope.
No.
Everyone's just gonna be pissed that it was a bad pick.
Right. They're all going to agree with you it was a bad pick, but they're not going to be like, oh, yeah,
I remember you said that in the
we
chat.
should have listened to you 5 years ago.
Right.
Damn it.
Yeah.
Oh, well. Yeah.
Yeah. Look, we all wanted Demidov here, too. That would have been great.
Yes.
The GM tried, but he went and picked a guy he thought was a better fit at 2, and then
and we know
one
who
of
you,
4 teams that passed.
and we know
Demidov.
who you guys are that wanted Demidov. We're 2 guys that wanted Demidov. You don't have to remind us every show. It's all good.
Yeah.
Hopefully, in a couple of years, this isn't even a thing anymore. In a perfect world, both players are fantastic players and cornerstone pieces for their teams. We just have to wait and see.
Yep.
That's all we can do.
That's all we can do. There's that great new 27 Hall of Fame design on your screen right now at chgolocker.com. Hopefully that's one of the ones that Rooney picked up when he renewed today. We also want to thank our friend Yuri Felkman, Blackhawks legend.
Blackhawks prospect.
For the 279 super chat saying, great show. We appreciate it, Yuri. Thank you so much.
You keep developing, kid.
100%. All right, I want to thank Steven for getting all the audio and video ready today. There was a lot coming in, and I had some technical difficulties after Davidson spoke, so kind of had to scramble and get it together very, very quickly. But the entire Kyle Davidson audio and video will be on our YouTube page at 3:45 today. So chances are, if you're listening to this on the podcast, it's already up, and you can go watch all 34 minutes of it on your own. Lots of good stuff in there. There's also some other highlights we didn't play on the show on our Twitter account, CHGO_Blackhawks, including why he thought that Teuvo Teravainen and Tyler Bertuzzi were good fits for the Hawks. And he also, towards the end, referenced that when Teuvo Teravainen arrived in Chicago, that Kyle Davidson's the one who picked him up at the airport, and said that Kyle said, like, I was really Teuvo's first friend when he came to the United States. We would go out to dinner all the time because we were about the same age, and, you know, Teuvo didn't know anybody, and they would hang out and go out to dinner all the time. And then when finally Teuvo got to know his teammates and stuff, that sort of faded away. But Kyle Davidson was the guy in his early days with the Hawks that picked up Teuvo from the airport and kind of took him under his wing, which is kind of cool.
That is cool. I wonder if they went to a Chipotle together.
To terrify my daughter?
And scared young children.
I don't know, man. I didn't know if he was there. I didn't know who Kyle Davidson was at that point. That was, yeah, she's still scared. She's a weird kid. All right, we're going to be back Monday. Hopefully we got Mario back. Hopefully he's feeling better on Monday.
Yep. We'll be answering mailbag questions regardless.
Yes, we'll do a mailbag Monday show. Hopefully not all about the pick you wanted at the draft. That would be good.
No, we're definitely going to start being more picky with our questions, I think.
We have to be, or it's going to be
a
mailbag week.
Mailbag week, yeah.
Yeah. So
I think we're going to start eventually getting into some review previews of all the. Now that we know what the roster is going to look like, we could start talking about the guys, what they did last year, and what we should expect for them to do this upcoming year too.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, this is the comment I want to get to from Mike. Right there, the second one from the bottom. He says, like I said, Boisvert was a reach. It makes no sense to waste a second-round pick to move up 2 picks to grab a guy who's a reach because another team might have drafted him too early, too.
It's a reach in your opinion, Mike, not a reach in the people making the decisions.
Yeah. Pretty much everyone has raved about the Blackhawks draft.
I'm going to look up Mike Porton and see which team he scouts for.
Have you seen anyone say that Boisvert was a massive reach?
No, not really. No. Another thing that goes, it's best player. When they say best player available, it's best player on their board, not yours. Not Elliot Friedman's, not Craig Button's,
not Bob McKenzie's.
Man, I love Craig Button, but man, I'm starting to regret having him.
that did not help.
That backfired.
That's right. We'll do it next year.
We'll do it next year. Yeah, when we're picking 9th.
All right. Do us a favor, hit that like button on the way out. We would appreciate that. And we'll talk to you Monday for Mailbag Monday on the CHGO Blackhawks podcast.
We all silly like the mayor.